Part 35. Rebirth of Fantasy, Obtain the Sect System. Author, Red General. Chapter 341. Thank you all for your support for so long. This is the author's first time writing a book. Some of the writing is really messy. I understand and sincerely accept your insults. After all, the writing in some places is indeed not very good, and sometimes I feel that the writing is terrible. Of course, there are also many typos. I know this. Some readers have reminded me of this. I usually correct it when I see it. There is no way to avoid typos, and I want to avoid them, but sometimes I don't notice them. When I finish writing, I will check it carefully, but there will always be omissions. After all, I reread what I wrote, and I can read it at a glance. Here, I would like to say I am very sorry to everyone. But I also want to ask everyone to support the author more. After all, this book is the first book in the author's life. Sometimes I don't want to write when my grades are not good. After all, the data is not good and I have no motivation. But sometimes when I see a good review, I feel a little reluctant to leave those who support me, and I feel guilty. I believe you understand. When the data is not good, a good review from you is my hope. After all, I will always be happy when I think of people who have knowledge. However, when I see a negative review, I also feel a sense of loss. Sometimes I feel unconfident. Is this because my writing is really bad? Otherwise, why wouldn't the data be good at all? I have reflected and thought about it myself, and I know that there is a problem with some previous chapters. I will try my best to follow your suggestions and modify it. After the modification is successful, there are indeed more comments. There are still some parts that are not well written, and I still get scolded and complained about. I accept all these. After all, you can't make everyone like a book. I can only make the plot of the book better. I just wrote this book to gain some experience and see where I have shortcomings. From the beginning of more than 100,000 words to the current 500,000 words, I have never given up and have been updating steadily. After all, I thought that my lack of traffic was due to insufficient numbers, but reality gave me a hard blow. Even if I wrote so many words, there was still no traffic after all, so it was still the same. Although I feel very disappointed, I still update steadily every day. In fact, in this way, I can be regarded as a dedicated author, and I have no regrets from readers. What I have always insisted on when writing this book is that I want to write 1,000,000 words. After writing 1,000,000 words, I will finish it. Because the data is not good, I can only write 1,000,000 words. If the data is good, I can write 2,000,000 words. Because when you read this book, I believe you also feel a little confused. This is because my description is not detailed enough. Because it was a trough period and the data was not good, I didn't feel at all calm when I wrote it. If the data in this book is good, I may write each chapter carefully and describe the characters as perfectly as possible. Okay, today I just sigh a little bit. Of course, if there are any shortcomings, feel free to comment in the comment area. I will reply one by one, but if someone is insulting me, I will not reply, I will just watch. And here, the author is also extremely grateful to some readers who followed my steps closely and did not leave. If it weren't for you, I might have stopped writing when I had hundreds of thousands of words. Thank you, I solemnly thank you. Rebirth of Fantasy, Obtain the Sect System. Author, Red General. Chapter 342. Although Suminjao's strength has reached the high level of the ancient saint, the strength of the three people around her has also reached the peak of the ancient saint. How could she stop it on her own? In just one stick of incense, Suminjao was defeated and was kicked hard to the ground by one of the rough-looking strong men. At this moment, Suminjao's robe was torn, revealing her snow-white skin. Such an appearance made the man swallow and lick his dry lips again. The man was so ready to act that he couldn't hold it in any longer. He seemed to want to knock Su Minjiao down and do something violent in the next moment. Immediately, the man couldn't wait to lead the three of them to Su Minjiao. Looking at Su Minjiao's snow-white skin and the charming fragrance, the man leaned over with obsessed eyes, and kept inhaling the fragrance with his nose, with a look of enjoyment on his face. Su Minjiao felt disgusted by such a scene and was ready to resist. Unfortunately, the three of them had already stared at her, so she did not dare to act rashly. Then, one of the thin-looking men tapped Su Minjiao again. The next moment, Su Minjiao's pupils shrank, and she found that all her magic power disappeared in an instant, and she seemed to be locked. This time she really became a turtle in a urn, and could only be manipulated by others. When Han Chuang, who was lying not far away, saw this scene, he picked up his seriously injured body and crawled forward. It seemed that he wanted to grab Su Minjiao's hands, but he found that his vision was getting blurry and his double eyelids were getting heavier and heavier. Han Chuang knew that this was because he was bleeding too much and was too seriously injured to fall into a coma. But how could he let himself fall into a coma? He bit his lip without hesitation, trying to wake himself up. Minjiao, you bastards, don't touch her, no. Or else, me. Hearing these words, the man who was indulging in the fragrance of Su Minjiao suddenly turned his head and looked at him. A trace of contempt flashed in his eyes, his face was arrogant, and his tone was disdainful. I really didn't expect that there is still a bug alive. Tisk tisk tisk, Minjiao, tisk tisk, the scream is so intimate. These words really make me feel itchy. If you see the person you love most being ruined by me, how will you feel? What will happen? Ha ha ha. Will your heart be broken? Ha ha, I'm really looking forward to that scene, but don't worry, don't be anxious. Later you will be able to see the person you love most being humiliated, ruined, and raped by me. He stepped on the ground and crawled like a dog. Tisk, to be honest, your woman is really beautiful. This is the first time I have seen a woman who can make me obsessed with her like this. Then the man pointed at his abdomen and said with an evil smile. Did you see this? This is all caused by your woman. When I fucked other women, I never felt this way. Only she gave me this feeling. It's a bit strange to say that, especially when I'm close to your woman, I feel very excited and want to fuck her really hard. You bastard. Han Chuang gritted his teeth and said. The moment they touched each other, it felt so good to touch. He just wanted Han Chuang to watch his woman being insulted, trampled on, and ruined. The man didn't care about this, leaned into his ear and whispered. She will no longer be a clean woman, and she will even suffer that kind of humiliation and despicable humiliation every day. Gradually, Su Minjiao couldn't help but think of the disaster the old man told her that day. Su Minjiao's tears streaked down her cheeks and she laughed miserably. She looked at Han Chuang crawling towards her and said. Because he has always done this before. He also lifted her legs up and kept smelling with his nose. That desperate and unwilling look was still vivid in his mind. Han Chuang, who was not far away, looked at this scene, shook his head repeatedly, and begged. Hearing the man's words, Han Chuang's heart felt as if someone had pinched him. He was in great pain, but he gritted his teeth and crawled in front of the man, hugging his legs. He couldn't let Su Minjiao fall into the hands of this devil. He began to beg hard. Comfortable, comfortable, so comfortable. Only in this way will men feel very satisfied. Han Chuang let out a long roar, and his tears couldn't stop flowing. He was so sad that in the end, he couldn't even make a sound and could only watch helplessly. The man over there dismissed Han Chuang's voice and was still admiring it to himself. Only the slender jade legs and snow-white neck were exposed. Seeing this scene, the three people standing next to the man couldn't help but swallow their saliva. After all, Su Minjiao was so beautiful, so beautiful that I didn't know how to describe it in words. He couldn't help but lick his lips. When would she, Suminjao, suffer such humiliation? Her expression was very unwilling, very unwilling. In just a few breaths, most of Suminjao's robe had been torn off. But the man still endured it, and then he put his ugly, disgusting face against Suminjao's face, looking at Suminjao's delicate lips and the moist fluid leaking out. Suminjao closed her beautiful eyes, her expression full of despair. But the man seemed to think that this was not enough, so he slowly began to tear Suminjao's robes apart. His heart began to beat. It smells so good. How can there be such fragrant legs in the world? Tisk tisk tisk, ha 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 ha, I'm afraid it will make me feel so good. Then the man licked it with his tongue, and immediately looked at Suminjao's breasts. His eyes moved slightly and he placed his hands on it tremblingly. And Suminjao could only watch the scene helplessly, her beautiful eyes filled with crystal clear tears. Unfortunately, her magic power was blocked, just like a mortal, it seemed that her fate was doomed. Disaster, is this a disaster? But why do I feel like I am the disaster? Haha. Unfortunately, the man kicked him away without hesitation, then turned around and walked towards Suminjao. You can see this thing show off later, ha ha ha. The man laughed wildly, his tone full of mockery, and his face full of obsession with Suminjao's beauty. At this moment, Suminjao was like an angel falling into the abyss, no longer as dazzling as before. No. Don't, I beg you, don't do that to Mingyu, please. No. No. I beg you, don't do this, don't do this. The man had already reached Suminjao's body and gently touched the wet and slippery skin with his hands, his expression not to mention enjoying it. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Rebirth of Fantasy, Obtain the Sect System. Author, Red General. Chapter 343. Just when he was about to kiss her. At this moment, there was a roar in the sky. A giant golden thunder fell violently. Boom. And this giant golden thunder struck the man in the lower abdomen, and the power of thunder and lightning kept paralyzing his body. Until he no longer feels that way. It seems to be broken. When the three people next to the man saw this scene, their expressions instantly became alert. They looked at the sky and shouted angrily. Who's going to get out of here? Snort. A cold snorting sound spread between heaven and earth, as if a god was angry. The next moment, hundreds of figures nearby were seen screaming and panicking. A black demonic dragon appeared out of thin air. The demonic dragon kept biting them with its teeth and ran rampant. Unfortunately, many people were beaten into bloody water. Hot and bright blood was sprinkled on his scales, extremely translucent, and such a shocking sight made people's hair stand on end. But this is just the beginning. Roar. The black dragon kept roaring and soared high in the sky, as arrogant as an overlord. Then he rushed towards the crowd again. He saw a strong man in the immortal king realm being bitten tightly in his mouth. The man's eyes showed deep panic and fear, and he kept struggling, trying to break free. It's a pity that with his meager strength, how can he block the sharp teeth of the magic dragon? The next moment, the black dragon's mouth forcefully bit his head into pieces, and blood instantly erupted, flowing in the dragon's mouth like juice. The demon dragon licked the area near its mouth, and its blood-red eyes showed a trace of fiery heat. It kept scanning the surroundings, as if looking for the next prey. Everyone nearby saw this and ran away in all directions, their expressions full of fear. And on the body of the black dragon stood a man in black robes. This man was bloodthirsty. Seeing what Suminjao encountered, strong murderous intent flashed through her bloodthirsty eyes. Beast. Then he controlled the magic dragon and rushed towards the man. But there were 3 strong men at the peak of the ancient saint beside him, and they had already noticed the bloodthirst, so how could they let him come over easily? Originally, the 3 of them thought he was a strong man, but they didn't expect that he was just an ant in the immortal sovereign realm. Seeing this, the rugged man in yellow grinned and said, "Trash dares to come and meddle in other people's business, it's really..." Before the strong man could finish speaking, a deist figure appeared silently in front of him. The deist figure did not hesitate to insert his hand into the strong man's body. After searching for a while, he seemed to have found the target and crushed his heart severely. Immediately afterwards, he burst out with a surging momentum, knocking the 2 nearby people aside. Immediately, a fiery red long knife emerged from the figure's hand, and with cold eyes, he chopped off the head of the man in front of him. Puff! Hot blood fell on the man's face. Su Mingyao also opened her beautiful eyes at this time. Looking at the scene in front of her, her pale face finally showed a smile, but the smile looked a bit miserable and desolate. How could there be the aloof Su Mingyao before? And Bloodthirsty also controlled the magic dragon. At this time, he came to Su Mingyao's side and jumped off the magic dragon. The huge figure that blocks out the sky is intimidating and creepy, making others unable to resist at all. Seeing the man covered in blood, he narrowed his bloodthirsty eyes and stepped on the man's head with his foot, crushing it into pieces and kicking the man's body aside like garbage. What on earth is this? Such a terrifying power. Is it the power of the person in front of me? It's okay. You should go and see Brother Han. He is seriously injured. I'm afraid he will die later. The figure who took action just now was Wu Yan. The bottom of my heart was full of guilt for Su Mingyao. If he hadn't come late, maybe what happened just now wouldn't have happened. Then he gave Han Chuang a top recovery pill. Boom. The 2 men who fought with him were also miserable, and they were very puzzled. They were obviously both strong men at the peak of the ancient saints, so why was there such a big gap? A hunting battle is coming, and those people will face the despair of his life. Seeing this scene, Bloodthirsty had no intention of continuing to watch the show. He jumped on the magic dragon, his eyes turned cold, and he aimed at the next crowd and started fighting. It seems that Wu Yan is the real ancient saint powerhouse, and they are just newcomers who have just arrived in the ancient saint realm. And what about the middle-aged man next to him? In the whirlpool, thick electric light emitted. Seeing this, his bloodthirsty heart slowly relaxed, and then he turned around and looked at the fierce battle taking place not far away. And this object is the nether boat that Qin Xian gave to the second palace. It was the leader of the Wu clan. It was the soul demon who invited him over for safety reasons. Immediately, a mana appeared in Bloodthirsty's hand, and this mana was injected into his body. He slowly let out a breath. The injury was not serious, but he was bleeding too much and was unconscious. Hearing this, he nodded heavily with Bloodthirsty, and immediately came to Han Chuang and checked his injuries. The bloodthirsty expression showed a hint of apology and remorse for her. From the looks of it, Wu Yan had no intention of being suppressed. Instead, he fought more and more fiercely, beating the 2 men back again and again. Sorry, we're late. This kind of person died without mercy, and it was already a bloodthirsty act of kindness to him by not torturing him to death. At this moment, Wu Yan was like a god, holding a long red sword in his hand, fighting 2 peak ancient saints 1 against 2. In just one breath, Han Chuang's complexion turned rosy, and his aura gradually stabilized, not losing his previous pale complexion. When the thin-faced man saw this scene, his eyes showed deep amazement, and there was also a trace of fear in his heart. Seeing Su Mingyao's miserable appearance, Xue Xue's expression changed, and a blue robe appeared in his hand, and he gently covered Su Mingyao's body with it. The next moment, a huge ferry boat that was completely black and exuded a strange and ominous aura appeared high in the sky. In addition, something seemed to have crashed into the space. Dark clouds filled the sky high in the sky, and lightning flashed. In the blink of an eye, all the dark clouds slowly condensed into a whirlpool. At the same time, while everyone was fighting, a blast of shattering void echoed throughout the sky. The middle-aged man swallowed and looked at Wu Yan opposite. After all, Su Minjiao almost lost her body. But Su Minjiao shook her head, showed a gentle smile to her, and said in a weak tone. Rebirth of Fantasy, obtain the Sect system. Author, Red General. Chapter 344. At this moment, Wu Yan was looking at them with a calm face, but he couldn't hide the sarcasm in his eyes. At this moment, there was a dense crowd of people standing on the Nether boat, which were all the powerful men from the Soul Palace and the Shadow Palace. Everyone looked down with cold eyes. The sharp blades in their hands were already emitting bursts of cold light, and it seemed that they would rush over like tigers in the next moment. The figures of the Soul Demon and the Shadow Demon appeared on the bow of the Netherworld boat. The two of them stood with their hands folded, looking down below like gods and demons. Looking at the scene just now, the two of them also saw it. A death-like killing intent flashed in his eyes. The killing intent emanating from the two men shot through the sky, causing the dark clouds high in the sky to roar, as if heaven was angry. Anyone who dares to insult their profound heaven sect is not a slap in the face. What's more, some of their disciples died at the hands of these people. In an instant, the two of them exuded a dark black gas, and in a flash of light, the two of them merged into one body, turning into a figure wearing a ghost mask and a black cloak. Now the two of them should change their names to Moying. The demonic figure twisted its head, an evil smile appeared at the corner of its mouth, and two blades appeared in its hands, which were obviously the Netherworld's twin swords. The entire body of the Netherworld double blade is covered in black, with streams of black demonic energy flowing everywhere in the blade, and from time to time, a terrifying low roar will be emitted from the blade. There seems to be something terrifying hidden inside. Kill. The demonic shadow made a shuddering sound, like a devil in hell roaring, which made people feel creepy. Immediately afterwards, the figure of the demonic shadow instantly appeared below. His figure was like lightning, constantly shuttling through the crowd, and with every step he took, the Netherworld's double swords would be covered in blood. No one could survive around in his hands. And one after another purple-robed figures and black-robed figures descended from the Nether boat, and the strength of each one was rolling. They found their respective opponents and engaged in fierce battles. The Nether boat has raised their strength to a great level, and coupled with the fact that everyone can summon monsters, it can be said that no one is their opponent. Any monster can consume them to death. The scene instantly turned into chaos. Chirp. A clear and loud cry spread throughout the world. I saw Lin Tian arriving here on a fiery red phoenix, looking down below. Beside him, there were two outstanding-looking women. The two people were Xue Ling and Yun Fenji. The reason why Lin Tian did not show up at the sect competition was because he received the news asking for help and rushed over without stopping. The phoenix at his feet was given to him by Qin Xian. Boom! Suddenly, a huge thunder flashed in the sky. The thunderous sound was extremely harsh and resounded in the ears of everyone on the battlefield. Boom! I saw a middle-aged man wearing a black and blue shirt and a majestic face stepping out of the thundercloud. Thunder and lightning flashed around him. A pair of blue pupils also flashed with lightning, as domineering as the King of Thunder. This person is none other than the master of Tianli Peak in Profound Heaven Sect, Lei Wuxian. Lei Wuxian stepped on the void and came to Lin Tian and others. Seeing this scene, Lin Tian bowed his hand to him. He still respected Lei Wuxian very much. Lei Wuxian glanced at him with a smile, nodded, then looked up and down, and said coldly, "Let me come and meet you for a while." Then he glanced at Lin Tian again, "Remember to follow me, just in time to let me see what level your strength has reached." Hearing this, Lin Tian nodded, controlled the phoenix and started to attack the crowd below. At the same time, Wu Yan, who was in mid-air, also started a fierce battle with the two of them. Fierce flames streaked through the shattering void sky from time to time, making the two of them feel even more uncomfortable. I saw a middle-aged man holding his chest with one hand and panting slightly. It was so uncomfortable. It was too uncomfortable to fight Wu Yan, especially Wu Yan's flames, which really made him feel terrifying. With a light touch, he could feel the soul-devouring power. The thin man next to him was not like this, but there was absolutely no way he could escape the two of them. After all, he had tested Wu Yan's speed, and it was no worse than him. Wu Yan opposite looked at the expressions of the two of them and smiled coldly, "You can die now. I don't need to play with you anymore." After the words fell, in the surprised eyes of the thin man, the middle-aged man was caught off guard and was directly punched to the ground by Wu Yan. Immediately, Wu Yan appeared in front of the middle-aged man again, grinned ferociously, and thrust the fiery red knife into his chest. Puff! Ah! The middle-aged man's eyes paused, then he shouted loudly and spit out a mouthful of thick blood. Seeing this, Wu Yan's expression was still so indifferent. A thick flame appeared in his palm, and then he put the flame into the middle-aged man's chest. Bah! 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 In an instant, the flames spread all over the middle-aged man's body like a flood. This fierce burning made the middle-aged man mentally exhausted and his eyes turned white. It made him roll on the ground in pain, not looking like a peak Saint Realm powerhouse. When the thin man in mid-air saw this scene, his eyes showed a hint of fear, and he already had the idea of abandoning the middle-aged man and escaping alone. Wu Yan didn't even glance at the man in mid-air, but continued to input flames at the middle-aged man's chest. The fire suddenly intensified at that moment. In just a few breaths, the middle-aged man looked ferocious, screamed, and turned into dust. At this time, the figure of the man in the air had disappeared. If nothing else, he should have escaped. The demonic figure on the ground raised his eyes and glanced high in the sky, sneered, and without any care, he once again broke into another battlefield with the netherworld swords. His blades needed blood to upgrade. As for the person who escaped, he will die sooner or later. Letting him escape now is just to give him a glimmer of hope. In the end, he will feel despair. That kind of pain is not something ordinary people can bear, huh? The escape of the Saint Realm strongman caused the spirit of the other immortal venerable immortal sovereign immortal king to collapse instantly, and they looked at the scene in disbelief. Without the support of the strong Saint Realm, how will they fight next? Can't fight at all. Gradually, some people have begun to stop resisting. Since they can't withstand the fierce offensive of the Second Palace, why not die happily? This is better than being tortured. Rebirth of Fantasy, obtain the Sect system. Author, Red General. Chapter 345. The strong men of the second hall did not show mercy to them. Instead, they waved the sharp blades in their hands and carried out a death-like massacre on them. One after another, they were cut off at the waist and torn into pieces. Blood covered the entire scene, flowing continuously like a long river. The scene could simply be described as horrific. There were battles and killings everywhere. The disgusting smell of blood was everywhere in the air. The sound of collisions and roars resounded continuously, and the sky became dark. In the blink of an eye, there was only a roar and a heavy rain began. It seems to be a baptism of battle. After a cup of tea, the fighting had stopped. In a burst of dark light, the demonic shadow was once again divided into the shadow demon and the soul demon. Then the two of them glanced around and came to Su Minjiao. He expressed deep apology to her. "I'm sorry. It's just that we came too late, and you were frightened, and you almost lost your virginity because of it. We owe you a favor. No matter what happens in the future, as long as it is within our ability, the two of us can help you solve all your troubles." Soul Demon and Shadow Demon leaned down and lowered their heads, their voices full of guilt and apology for Su Minjiao. When the other strong men from the second hall who came closer saw this scene, their eyes revealed a hint of surprise, and they looked at the scene in disbelief. They have never seen their palace master lower himself and apologize to a person. However, then everyone invariably imitated the behavior of the soul demon and the shadow demon, lowering their heads and leaning down. Seeing this, Suminjaya breathed a sigh of relief and stood up weakly from the ground. Most of her red robe had been destroyed, causing her figure to disappear and appear, but no one dared to look at her. They are not the same guys as before. Suminjaya came to the two of them, helped them up, with a gentle smile on her face, shook her head and said softly, "It's okay, it's just humiliation. Anyway, it's just a few touches by those dirty hands. I don't mind. I accept your wishes, but I can't accept what you promised." Hearing this, the two soul demons and shadow demons looked at each other and sighed one after another, with deep guilt for Suminjaya in their eyes. The bloodthirsty Lei Wuxian and others also came here. Seeing this scene, it was hard to say anything. Because they knew that no matter what they said, Suminjaya would probably not accept it happily. Since it was not accepted, they could only keep it in their hearts. When the time is right, just pay her back what you owe her. His bloodthirsty eyes moved, and he just looked at Lin Tian and his partner Xueling. Seeing this, Lin Tian seemed to have guessed what Xueling was going to say, and said to Xueling beside him, "Ling why don't you go help Suminjaya get dressed, and take this opportunity to give her some psychological persuasion? We Profound Heaven Sect owe her a huge apology this time." Hearing this, Xueling nodded. Even if Lin Tian didn't say anything, she would do so later. After all, they were both women, so how could she not know the pain in Suminjaya's heart? Who can bear that kind of scene? That kind of humiliation, and humiliation is implanted in the heart. After all, Suminjaya is also a human being, not to mention that the scene where she was bullied was seen by Han Chuang. Even if Han Chuang doesn't mind, she still has that in her heart. Then, Xueling came to Suminjaya's side, held Suminjaya's slender palm, and gave her a sweet smile. "Sister Minjaya, how about I help you get dressed? After all, Sister Minjaya is so beautiful. If someone takes a fancy to your appearance again, that would be bad, and Ling would also feel bad." Suminjaya glanced at her, her heart warmed slightly, and she nodded to her. Wu Yan also led all the powerful men of the Wu clan to come here. Seeing the scene just now, he couldn't help but let out a long sigh. Such a good girl unexpectedly encountered such a thing. Just as Wu Yan was lamenting, the soul demon suddenly appeared in front of him, patted his shoulder and said, "Thank you very much for the Wu clan's help this time. If it weren't for you, this battle might have lasted for a while, and many people would have died." Hearing this, Wu Yan smiled. He did not dare to take credit and be arrogant. He quickly shook his head and waved his hands. "It's just a trivial matter. After all, I, the Wu clan, have also received many gifts from your soul palace. Besides, I have long disliked these people in the realm of life and death. It would be better to satisfy myself by killing them. Otherwise, we don't know how many innocent people will die at their hands." Hearing this, the soul demon laughed and looked at him deeply. Afterwards, no one said anything more. Soul demon and shadow demon will lead all the powerful men in the second hall to station here, waiting for Qin Xian's next order. Even if the four major forces in the realm of life and death cannot be destroyed, this evil ghost sect must be massacred. They are not afraid of being attacked by all the forces in the realm of life and death. As long as they do not encounter the immortal emperor, they are not afraid at all with the nether boat. I was even happy about it, as I could just serve them all in one pot, saving them some trouble later. 3 days later. In the Profound Heaven sect, the sect competition has ended, and the top 10 rankings have been determined. Qin Xian also distributed all the rewards received by the top 10 to these 10 people. At this time, inside Tianqian Palace, several figures gathered here. They are Su Minjiao, Han Chuang, and others. And Shuexian stood in the center of the hall, reporting to Qin Xian what they had experienced. After half a stick of incense, Qin Xian clasped his hands behind his back, let out a long sigh, and glanced at Su Minjiao, who was sitting on the side of the hall. His eyes were full of deep apologies to her, and he didn't know how to compensate her. After all, Qin Xian himself did not expect that such a thing would happen. Although Su Minjiao is not a profound heaven sect person, her partner Han Chuang is, and he has to make up for her both emotionally and rationally. Su Minjiao, who was located below, also seemed to notice Qin Xian's expression until he was in trouble. He glanced at Han Chuang beside him, walked out, cupped his hands to Qin Xian and said, "Sect Master Qin, you don't need to feel guilty or anything because of my matter. After all, this matter happened because of me, and I am also guilty. If I don't insist on following Han Chuang and the others to the realm of life and death this time, maybe these things won't happen. And those disciples and elders will not die." Su Minjiao always thought that the incident itself was caused by her appearance. As everyone knows, apart from Su Minjiao's beauty, people in the evil ghost sect have already noticed that Su Minjiao's beauty is only secondary. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Rebirth of Fantasy, Obtain the Sect System. Author, Red General. Chapter 346. Upon hearing this, Qin Xian waved his hand and said, "This is not okay. Regardless of the cause and effect, you almost lost your virginity, so I will naturally compensate you. There is nothing to say about it. And don't say anything more. Just ask for whatever you want. Even if the sect can't do it, I, Qin Xian, will do it. If you still have hatred in your heart, I can also eradicate the evil ghost sect for you." This is not because Qin Xian is trying to please Su Minjiao, but because Qin Xian is a principled person. Others almost lost their virginity, but no matter what he did, he had to do something. Of course, Qin Xian actually had his own little thoughts. He hoped to take this opportunity to draw Su Minjiao into his sect. After all, Su Minjiao is also extremely powerful, not much worse than Wu Yan, the leader of the Wu clan. It is already very good to be able to fight with the strength of a high-level ancient saint against 3 strong men at the peak of the ancient saint, and to be able to sustain it for such a long time. After hearing Qin Xian's words, Su Minjiao lowered her head and fell into deep thought. After a while, Su Minjiao looked at Qin Xian and said, "Sect Master Qin, I don't want anything, but if Sect Master Qin really wants to compensate me, then I just want you to agree to Minjiao's 3 conditions." Oh. Seeing this, Qin Xian raised his eyebrows slightly and asked calmly, "What conditions? As long as it is within my power, I can agree to it." But Su Minjiao shook her head and said, "Mingyu herself doesn't know what the 3 conditions are. Can she wait until Minjiao thinks of it before telling the sect leader?" Upon hearing this, Qin Xian glanced at her, nodded, agreed to the matter, and said nothing more. Afterwards, Han Chuang and Su Minjiao retreated, leaving only Lin Tian and Shuexian in the hall. Qin Xian looked at the 2 of them expressionlessly. Although Su Minjiao did not put forward any conditions, he still had to destroy this evil ghost sect. After all, the elders and disciples of Profound Heaven sect all died in this force. If this force is not eradicated, it will be difficult to eliminate Qin Xian's wrath. Thinking of this, Qin Xian ordered the 2 of them, "Go ahead and let the Soul Demon and Shadow Demon lead the strong men of the second hall to destroy the evil ghost section, kill my disciples and elders of Profound Heaven sect so that they can never escape." When they heard this, their eyes lit up and they nodded heavily. They had originally wanted to say this. After all, the dead disciples and elders had a good relationship with them. They usually talked, laughed, and drank together, but he died like this. The two of them were very sad and wished to eliminate this force. Because those people were all old disciples, they had been with them for a long time from profound heaven continent to the 10 realms, so they naturally developed a friendship. Correct. Qin Xian seemed to have thought of something again, and then said, "Bring back the bodies of the dead disciples and elders, and I will see if they can be resurrected. If they cannot be resurrected, then give them some resources to give to their families." After hearing this, the two of them looked startled and felt extremely grateful to Qin Xian. They did not expect that their sect master would even think of this. Everything in the 10 domains is decided by the ancestor. After all, the two are not of the same magnitude at all. However, the system voice in my mind has not stopped yet. Because the territory lord is a powerful person appointed by heaven, but the two major forces are not. Especially the power of the field. It looks like we have to increase the speed again. This time, let's start from the realm of life and death. Seeing this scene, the two of them backed away. The mission was exactly what he wanted. Moreover, Qin Xian also happened to take action against the realm of life and death. Qin Suanja sat on the throne, his deep eyes shone with a gleam of light, and the corner of his mouth showed a smile. After the two left, Qin Xian shook his head and sighed. This is something more terrifying than the human temple and the devil's palace. You must know that the power of the ancestor is unimaginable. Ding, a side mission is released, asking the host to annex half of the life and death realm and the Xianhuang realm within 10 years after completion. You can obtain a lifetime experience of the Immortal Emperor Strong level, a system value of 400,000, twin demon bodies, 10 rank 6 mortal immortal jade bead, 5 rank 7 mortal immortal jade bead, and 1 rank 8 mortal immortal jade bead. Speaking of which, this is the first time in my profound heaven sect that disciples and elders have died at the hands of other people's forces. Hearing this, Qin Xian took a breath, which made him feel relieved. I saw Lin Tian patting his chest and saying, "The host is asked to become the first-class force in the 10 realms within 100 years, and the strong men in his own force must have 10 saint realms, 18 immortal venerables, 30 immortal sovereigns, and 100 immortal king strong men. After completing the task, you can obtain life and time of the power of the great Dao Law, a rank 12 mortal jade bead, the imperial weapon eternal life sword, a field power, random, a heavenly Dao body, and a chaos body." He was also afraid that if he continued to attack other domains, it would attract the attention of the domain lords. After all, the strength of the top 10 domain lords reached that of the ancestors, so Qin Xian had to be concerned about this threat. Qin Xian glanced at him, nodded, turned around, waved to the two of them, his eyes moved slightly, as if he was thinking. However, this is also helpful in completing the main mission. Thinking of this, Qin Xian's eyes moved. If it were other forces at this time, it would be impossible to complete even if they were given tens of thousands of years and dozens of epochs. System, I would like to ask, if I attack other domains without any scruples, will the top 10 domain masters notice me? However, Qin Xian seemed to have thought of something again. After hesitating for a while, he asked the system in his mind. One thought is life, one thought is death. In addition to these two major forces, Qin Xian seems to have heard that the dragon race and the phoenix clan also have powerful ancestors, but these two races are in a state of seclusion, and they have no intention of appearing in the world at all. Master, oh no, don't worry, Sect Master, Lin Tian will definitely bring their bodies back intact. Ding, release the main quest. Ding, as long as the host does not annex the entire domain excessively, the top 10 domain lords will not attack you. This is why the system only allows the host to annex half of it. Upon hearing this, Qin Xian's pupils shrank, and his expression showed a hint of shock. The reward for this mission was really too generous. Although the mission rewards are generous, it is still extremely difficult to become a first-class force, especially since the time limit is only 100 years. Qin Xian can do it, but the process is a little difficult. Upon hearing this, Qin Xian's expression remained unmoved. The rewards for the side missions were much less than those for the main missions. There is no way to be stronger than the human temple and the demonic palace. Although the two major forces also have ancestors, they are not as good as the territory lord. Hearing the sudden voice in his mind, Qin Xian's expression changed, but the system hadn't spoken for a long time. Rebirth of Fantasy, obtain the Sect system. Author, Red General. Chapter 347. I almost forgot, Azure Dragon is also a dragon race, and he is one of the 4 mythical beasts. If it grows to its peak, it won't be much worse than the 5-clawed golden dragon and the magic dragon. Besides, Azure Dragon has not returned to the land of dragon ancestor yet. Having said this, Qin Xian's eyes moved and he waved towards the main hall. The next moment, Azure Dragon's huge figure hovered in the hall, and then transformed into a daist shape in a burst of light. I saw Azure Dragon cupping his fists at Qin Xian and saying, "I wonder what Master has to say to Long Ao." The name Long Ao was given to him by Qin Xian not long ago. Upon hearing this, Qin Xian said calmly, "Do you want to go back to the land of dragon ancestor?" Hearing this, Long Ao's eyes lit up and he lowered his head. As a member of the dragon race, he always wants to return to the land of dragon ancestor, but Qin Xian is his master, and he cannot abandon his master and go back there. This is a treasonous act, and Long Ao will not do it. Thinking of this, Long Ao's face became a little hesitant. Seeing this scene, Qin Xian seemed to have guessed the difficulty in his heart, and said slowly, "You don't have to hesitate. If you want to go back, I can let you go back. After all, everyone wants to go back to their hometown, and so do I." Hearing this, Long Ao's eyes showed a hint of determination. He looked at Qin Xian and nodded. "Master, I want to go back to the land of dragon ancestor. I want to go back and recognize my ancestors. After all, the old dragon race senior is still waiting for me. I don't want him to think I'm deceiving him." Qin Xian nodded calmly and said, "In that case, then you can go back, but you have to take someone back with you." As soon as he finished speaking, a man wearing a white robe, a handsome face, and a smile that was bathed in the breeze appeared in the hall. "This person is Wu Su." Wu Su touched his hazy eyes, yawned, and said in a mediocre tone, "Sect Master, I don't know why you called me here. I'm still sleeping with Bingning." Qin Xian glanced at him and was speechless, but he still said seriously, "Do you want to go to the land of dragon ancestor?" Wu Su's eyes lit up when he heard this, and he became energetic instantly. He glanced at Long Ao, who seemed to have guessed something, and said hesitantly, "Does the Sect Master want me and Long Ao to go to the dragon race?" Qin Xian nodded. "What? Are you unwilling?" Wu Su quickly shook his head, waved his hand and said, "No, no, of course I am very willing. I haven't been to the land of the dragon ancestor yet. If I have this opportunity, I will naturally want to go." Seeing this, Qin Xian didn't say anything more. He looked at Long Ao aside and said, "In that case, then Long Ao, take Wu Su to the dragon race." Long Ao nodded upon hearing this without any rebuttal. But Qin Xian seemed to have thought of something else and asked, "By the way, I wonder if dragon race is xenophobic? If you take Wu Su there, will the dragon race people kick him out?" Qin Xian had some concerns. After all, the dragon race was the most domineering and arrogant race in the world. To say you are arrogant is an understatement. Proud and unruly suits dragon race. After hearing this, Long Ao lowered his head and thought for a while, and then replied with a respectful expression, "Probably not. Then I will just say that Wu Su is my friend. I believe that the seniors of dragon race will not kick him out. Seeing this, Qin Xian nodded slightly. Well, I don't need to say more. You can take Wu Su and go as soon as possible. Of course, Long Ao, you don't have to worry about the time of your return. You can come back whenever you want. Long Ao's heart moved. He took a deep look at Qin Xian and nodded. Afterwards, the few people said no more. Only Long Ao's body emitted a burst of green light, transformed into the azure dragon body, and disappeared from Qin Xian's eyes with Wu Su on his back. Watching the two disappear before his eyes, Qin Xian put his hands behind his back and his eyes moved slightly. Let Long Ao return to the land of Long Ancestor, this is just one of them. The second is that Qin Xian has his own little idea, that is, he wants to take this opportunity to check out the powerful people in the land of Dragon Ancestor. After all, his treasure, the sky-breaking mirror, can be viewed from a distance, regardless of any realm, as long as his sect disciples are there. This is also the reason why Qin Xian asked Wu Su to go. Half an hour later, Long Ao's figure appeared in the sky, and the originally blue sky gradually became a little dark. The next moment, the nearby void began to vibrate violently, as if something was about to appear. Then there was a click, and a cross crack opened. Seeing this, Long Ao's eyes moved, and he felt a hint of kindness in them. He immediately got in without hesitation and disappeared between the world. In a galaxy, Long Ao's figure appeared here, and in front of him, there was a black dragon hovering here. The huge body exudes a strong sense of oppression, and this black dragon is the same black dragon that was in Tianqian's secret realm. Wu Su, who was sitting on Long Ao's back, looked at the scene with a startled expression, meeting an old friend. In fact, the reason why the black dragon appears in the Tianqian secret realm starts from the moment when the profound heaven continent disappears in the dragon race. Hundreds of epochs ago. At that time, profound heaven continent was just a small world wandering among the myriad worlds. The complete way of heaven has not yet been born. But the human race and other races have been born. Naturally, dragon race is also among them. Although there are only a few of them, due to dragon race's powerful and domineering body, it took only tens of thousands of years to cultivate into the first race of the profound heaven continent. But such a perverted talent has naturally aroused the malice and jealousy of the human race. If it continues like this, dragon race will definitely pose a threat to them. Therefore, the human race thought for a long time, and promised various benefits to some powerful monsters, and then joined forces with them to launch a genocide against dragon race. But in the end they did not succeed and lost miserably. Because dragon race's own body is not comparable to these monsters and humans, at the expense of several dragon race strong men, the group destroyed some humans and monsters. However, because of this, the few surviving dragon races also knew that the profound heaven continent was not suitable for them to stay. They had to find a new place, otherwise with their strength, they would not be able to match these huge races. What's more, if dragon race wants to give birth to an heir, it will take a full year of mating and 100 years of cultivation. This seems to be a curse, otherwise dragon race's overbearing talent would probably have developed into tens of thousands of dragons in the shortest possible time. Back to business. A few dragon races accidentally discovered that the profound heaven continent began to collapse. The remaining consciousness of heaven also began to appear before the eyes of the world. Rebirth of Fantasy, obtain the Sect system. Author, Red General. Chapter 348. Because a dragon with a body shape of 10,000 feet long and exuding huge power fell from the sky into the center of the profound heaven continent. It was precisely because of this giant dragon that the remaining dragon race rushed here. They were surprised to find that this giant dragon had the same bloodline and aura as themselves. I didn't realize there were other dragon races in the world. In the end, under the watchful eyes of the large group, several dragon race experts laboriously pulled the giant dragon back into the group. He used half of his strength to rescue the giant dragon from the edge of life and death. Finally, the giant dragon woke up and saw them. Under the questions of other dragon races, the dragon told them about the scenes of their dragon race. After hearing this, these dragons had a slight desire to return to their hometown, because they found that other ethnic groups in the profound heaven continent were beginning to become unstable again, and seemed to want to attack them again. That being the case, why don't they take this opportunity to return to dragon race's own place? The giant dragon was also happy to do so. After all, they were all members of the same race. So after the giant dragon regained its full strength, under the watchful eyes of all the groups in the profound heaven continent, he directly negotiated with Tiandeo and brought the remaining dragons back to the land of the dragon ancestor. But what they don't know is that there are still several dragons sleeping in the profound heaven continent. They are all located in various hidden places in the profound heaven continent. Finally, after several more epochs, several giant dragons woke up one after another, but unfortunately, the profound heaven continent had already completed its development at this time. The human race gradually became stronger. When they saw several dragon races born, they became murderous and killed these giant dragons without hesitation. In the end, not surprisingly, the humans failed again, but unfortunately, only 2 of the several dragons survived. And he was still seriously injured. Just when they lost hope, the profound heaven continent appeared again. Immediately afterwards, the void collapsed again, and a golden dragon appeared on the profound heaven continent, and found 2 seriously injured dragon race. After treating them, they were brought back to the land of the dragon race. However, in order to fear that there were still dragon race descendants left in the profound heaven continent, a black dragon was sent to guard the secret realm. And this black dragon is also the one in Tianqian's secret realm, which is why dragon race disappeared in profound heaven continent. Black Dragon looked at the huge figure of Azure Dragon. His expression showed a hint of relief, but also a hint of surprise, as if he didn't expect that Azure Dragon had become so strong. "You're finally here. I've been waiting for you for a long time." Long Ao's face showed a hint of embarrassment and a hint of guilt when he heard this. "Senior, I'm sorry to have kept you waiting for so long." But Black Dragon laughed and didn't care about it. It was already great to be back, so how could he care about it? Then his eyes glanced at Wusu, who was sitting on Long Ao. Long's eyes lit up, his face looked a little unhappy, and he said coldly, "Why are you here?" When Wusu heard this, he coughed slightly, smiled at him, and replied, "Black Dragon, we are old friends after all. I came here because I naturally want to go to the land of the dragon ancestor with you to see how spectacular it is." Hearing this, he long snorted coldly. He and Wusu were not old friends. It was not an exaggeration to say that they were mortal enemies. But it doesn't matter if he goes to the land of the dragon ancestor, the black dragon. An ant whose strength has only reached the golden immortal realm will not be able to make any big waves if he goes there. In the land of dragon ancestor, the dragons with the lowest strength have reached golden immortal. The strongest one even reaches the ancestor, and has 2. There are about 10 powerful immortal emperors in dragon race. Then the black dragon's eyes condensed, and the nearby galaxy began to condense into vortexes one after another. There was a clicking sound inside the whirlpool. Swish! A crack in the void opened under the gathering of whirlpools. And inside the void crack is an endless mountain of mountains. Inside is the land of dragon ancestor. Long Ao was shocked when he saw the scene inside, and his eyes showed deep excitement. All the dragon eyes hidden in the dragon cave moved and woke up from their slumber, exuding strong coercion. Then he drilled into the crack in the void. Click, click, click. The black dragon looked at so many giant dragons outside looking at him, and his aura instantly weakened like a mouse meeting a cat. Long Yan glanced at Dragon Bone respectfully and nodded. "An altar covering thousands of miles stands here. The 2 are Long Ao and Hei Long." Seeing this scene, Long Ao behind him moved his eyes and turned into a man in green clothes. The other dragon races also reacted and began to transform into human forms. The land of the dragon ancestor. From time to time, you can see giant dragons passing by. Black Dragon glanced at him and smiled, "Follow me." The blue and white sky was also affected by this momentum. In the blink of an eye, it turned into a sky full of dark clouds, with flashes of lightning and constant thunder. The strength of these dragons has reached that of the ancient saints. At this time, on top of a giant mountain in the sky. High in the sky. Among them, there was an old man with white hair wearing a black robe and holding a cane, standing here quietly. The next moment, a huge black dragon emerged from the crack. And the black dragon instantly transformed into a man wearing a black robe. After all, their bodies are too big, and sometimes it is not convenient to move around, so they turn into human forms. Seeing this, Long Ao also swam in with Wusu on his back. Click. A crack opened quietly, and a tearing sound spread throughout the land of Dragon Ancestor. The aura emanating from his body was like an abyss, unable to see through anything real. The mighty and domineering Dragon Bone felt a little familiar when he saw the figure of the black dragon, and his golden pupils lit up immediately. "You are Dragon Flame." And Wusu's figure was exposed. Millions of mountains stand here like sharp swords one after another, exuding strong pressure everywhere. Even the laws of heaven and earth cannot occupy this place. Immediately afterwards, another giant green dragon rushed out with a human on its back. This giant golden dragon is the leader of the nine-clawed golden dragon clan, named Dragon Bone. In just a few breaths, hundreds of powerful dragon race warriors gathered in mid-air. The old man seemed to feel something and raised his eyes to the sky. The golden dragon exudes a noble and domineering aura, and the aura emanating from his body is that of the immortal emperor. I saw the dragon bones transformed into a middle-aged man wearing a nine-clawed dragon robe, with a majestic look and a noble aura. The powerful strength was so powerful that even void could not bear it, and it began to make a shattering sound. Especially the golden dragon at the head. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Rebirth of Fantasy, Obtain the Sect System. Author, Red General. Chapter 349. Feeling the aura that was not his own race, Longu frowned, narrowed his eyes slightly, and scolded Wusu in a low voice. "Are you a human?" The sound of Dragon Bone was so penetrating that it caused cold sweat to break out on Wusu's back, and he swallowed in a panic, almost spitting out a mouthful of blood. This was still the case when Dragon Bone was suppressing it as much as possible, otherwise the sound just now would have turned Wusu into blood mist. Afterwards, Wusu glanced at Longu tremblingly, but quickly lowered his head, as if he didn't dare to look directly at him. When Long Yan on the side saw this scene, a smile appeared on his lips, as if he was mocking Wusu's courage. "Wasn't it awesome when you were in Tianqian's secret realm before? You pretended to be holding a holy jade sword, why don't you pretend now?" Wusuk didn't hear these words, and even if he heard them, he didn't dare to say anything. He looked at the dragon bones, raised his hands with respect, and said, "Senior dragon race, Junior is indeed a human race." "Oh." Dragon Bone raised his eyebrows and asked, "Then why did you come to my dragon ancestral land again? Do you have any ideas about my dragon race? Or are you sent by the guys from the human race temple?" This, Wusu didn't know how to answer when he heard this. He stood there awkwardly, a little at a loss. Seeing this, Dragon Bone didn't say anything, he just raised his eyes and glanced at Long Yan, criticizing. "Long Yan, why did you bring him here? Don't you know that the Daoist people are very cunning?" Long Yan looked a little embarrassed. "I thought it was not me who brought it." Then he glanced at Long Ao behind him and winked at him, as if he wanted him to explain. Seeing this scene, Long Ao swallowed his saliva. Facing a top powerhouse like Long Gu, it was a lie that he was not nervous. He stood up, clasped his fists towards Dragon Bone with a respectful look on his face and said, "Senior, it was Xiao Long who brought him here. He is my friend. Senior, you can rest assured that he will not have any undue thoughts about our dragon race. What's more, there are many powerful people in our land of dragon ancestor, all of whom are powerful. Furthermore, there is a powerful immortal emperor like Senior here, so what if he has ideas?" Hearing this, Dragon Bone laughed, very satisfied with these words. The figure instantly appeared beside him, patted Long Ao on the shoulder, and chuckled. "Why should I be worried? I'm just scaring him. Although the human race is cunning, in this world, strength will ultimately speak for itself." Then he looked at Long Ao with his eyes, and seemed to see something, and said hesitantly, "You should be from the Azure Dragon clan, right? I see that you have the blood of the Azure Dragon clan." Long Ao nodded and replied respectfully, "Yes, Xiao Long belongs to the Azure Dragon clan." As soon as these words came out, the rest of Dragon race and others looked at each other, but they couldn't hide the shock in their eyes. Azure Dragon is one of the 4 divine beasts, and the only one as powerful as the 9-clawed Golden Dragon clan. However, in the past few epochs, the Azure Dragon family seems to have encountered something. No matter how they mate, they can't produce any children, so now there are only 10 dragons in the Azure Dragon family. Outside the dragon cave, Long Seeing raised his eyes and looked at the beautiful scenery outside, but his expression did not show any relief or enjoyment, but showed a trace of melancholy and worry. Moreover, this thing was so hidden that even a strong person like him, the immortal emperor, could not detect it. In the end, he changed his method and began to examine his own body and that of other Azure dragons. Although there are few, they are all very powerful. Then Long Seeing sat up, his eyes narrowed, his hands behind his back, he raised his eyes and walked out. In these years, Long Seeing has been supporting him all by himself. It is also because of this that he can reach the peak of Immortal Emperor. When Long Ao saw the expressions of the other dragon races, a trace of doubt flashed across his face. He didn't understand why they were surprised, but he didn't ask too much. A bad thing was put into their Azure Dragon family. Although this thing didn't exist at first, it had an impact from generation to generation. His own strength has reached the peak of Immortal Emperor, and he is the only dragon in the current dragon race who can become the ancestor. It can be understood as a chronic poison. I wanted to find out what the reason was, but unfortunately Long Seeing searched for tens of thousands of years and couldn't find anything. No, the 9-clawed Golden Dragon clan would not do such a thing, not even all the dragons would do such a thing. A middle-aged man wearing a green-black robe and a stubble on his face sat cross-legged among them, with a pair of emerald-green eyes that were as bright as the vast stars. If even the ancestor can't be found, then Long Seeing has nothing to do. But Wu Su stood behind Long Ao with a nervous look on his face, saying nothing, for fear that he would say something and be slapped to death, and he tried his best to avoid the eyes of the dragons. He has been stuck in this realm for millions of years and has been unable to break through. This situation also makes Long Seeing even more worried and melancholy. Who is it? Who has a grudge against my Azure Dragon clan? Could it be the 9-clawed Golden Dragon clan? Long Seeing paced back and forth with his hands behind his back, but shook his head and rejected the 9-clawed Golden Dragon clan. If I had known earlier, I wouldn't have come. Otherwise, why would I have suffered? They have all reached the Saint Realm, and the leader of the Azure Dragon clan is also a powerful immortal emperor. Even now, Zilong, the overlord of the entire dragon ancestral land, doesn't know what the reason is. With every step he takes, the nearby void will be slowly crushed, making a clicking sound, which is enough to show his terrifying strength. Immediately afterwards, Long Seeing sighed, his eyes a little lonely. because he felt that perhaps only by breaking through the ancestors could he find out the reason why the Azure Dragon clan could not give birth to children. After all, being watched by such top experts, he felt flustered and muttered in his heart. At the same time, in a huge dragon cave in the land of Dragon Ancestor. This person is the leader of the Azure Dragon clan, Long Xing. Long Xing wanted to break through the ancestors. Then, I saw a lot of dragons. He didn't want the Azure Dragon clan to be destroyed in his own hands, and he didn't want the Azure Dragon to live alone in the future. After all, it would be too lonely. Because based on the current situation of the Azure Dragon clan, if there are no new baby dragons, then the Azure Dragon clan may disappear soon. But unfortunately, his talent is limited, and even with the body of a top divine beast, he cannot touch the barrier of the ancestor realm. Seeing this scene, one of the dragons thought about it for a moment, and then used his mind to inform the Azure Dragon clan. Wusu felt regretful in his heart, but he couldn't go back now, so he could only take one step at a time. In fact, Long Xing had a feeling that someone had started plotting against his Azure Dragon clan when they were first born. Rebirth of Fantasy, obtain the Sect system. Author, Red General. Chapter 350. But I have always been in the land of the Dragon Ancestor and have never appeared in the 10 domains. So what is going on? Long Xing stopped, thinking about everything in his mind, and he couldn't understand it. But at this moment, a dragon-shaped jade pendant on his chest lit up. Seeing this scene, Long Xing's eyes moved. This jade pendant is owned by all dragon races. It is an instrument they use to communicate with each other. If this thing were thrown onto the 10 realms, it would be enough to cause a sensation, because it contains dragon power and blood essence. Is someone calling me? Long Xing raised his eyebrows, thought for a while, and decided to walk out based on the directions inside the jade pendant. After half a stick of incense, Long Xing stepped into the air. His eyes happened to see a group of dragons surrounding them, seemingly chatting, but Long Xing could hear the sounds of surprise coming from inside. Seeing this, Long Xing frowned, stroked his chin and said, "Did something happen? But why did I detect a strange sense of intimacy in it? Is it possible?" Long Xing's emerald green eyes lit up, as if he had guessed something, and his body turned into a bolt of lightning and appeared in front of everyone. Finally, among the dragons, Long Ao's figure was seen. His eyes paused, and he looked a little excited. He came over with tears in his eyes, touched the confused Long Ao's cheek with both hands, and said ecstatically, "Are you a descendant of my Azure Dragon clan?" Long Ao reacted and looked at the middle-aged man in front of him who made him feel familiar. His heart moved, as if he knew who the dragon in front of him was, and he nodded quickly and replied, "That's right, Xiao Long is a dragon from the Azure Dragon clan." "I don't know, Senior, are you a dragon from my Azure Dragon clan?" "Xiao Ao feels a sense of intimacy in you." Hearing this, Long Xing showed a kind smile on his face, a tear appeared in the corner of his eyes, and nodded. "Yes, I am Long Xing, the leader of the Azure Dragon clan." When Long Gu next to him saw this scene, a smile appeared on his face. He understood Long Xing's current mood very well. Then he came over, patted Long Xing on the shoulder and joked, "Old guy, your Azure Dragon clan can be saved. Your Azure Dragon clan's bloodline can also be passed on. There's no need to complain that my 9-clawed Golden Dragon clan has more people than you." Hearing this, Long Xing wiped the tears from the corners of his eyes and chuckled, "Of course. It can be seen from this that the relationship between the two is very good." Then Long Xing seemed to think of something again, took Long Ao's hand and said, "Come, Xiao Ao, follow me to a place to meet the current dragon ancestor, and I can just tell him the good news." Hearing this, Long Ao nodded, and he saw hope in Long Xing's eyes. Although he didn't know why they just said that, Long Ao seemed to have guessed something in his heart. He glanced at Wusu behind him and signaled with his eyes that he should follow him. Seeing this scene, Wusu looked hesitant. Isn't it a little bad to ask him to meet the strongest person in Dragon Race today? However, seeing the staring eyes nearby, Wusu gritted his teeth and finally followed him nervously. Qinxian, who was in Tianqian Hall, also opened the sky-breaking mirror and saw the scene just now. The dark eyes moved slightly, and then a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth, as if he knew something. Hearing this, Long Xin touched his head and laughed a few times. Besides that, I also feel that he will not be affected by that curse and can produce blood for inheritance. At this time, the old man in black robes who was at the highest point of the altar lit up, turned around with his crutch and saw the three of them. Xiaolong, I think the fact that the Azure Dragon bloodline can be inherited cannot be spread. This news must be firmly sealed. The old man in black robe showed a smile and said softly. The two of them nodded, clasped their fists towards the old man in black robes with a respectful look on his face and said, "Ancestral Dragon. After all, this matter is important and must be guarded against." Zilong himself is not sure whether there are traitors in their dragon race. After doing this, Xiaolong raised his eyes to look at Wusu who was hiding behind him, and said slowly. Long Zia would never believe it if there weren't one or two traitors. Seeing this, Xiaolong did not blame him, but looked at Long Ao aside with a questioning look in his eyes. Hearing this, Long Xin pulled Long Ao out, nodded and replied. At this moment, he was in a state of joy, and he had not felt this happy for millions of years. Junior, I wonder whose order you came to my dragon race? Just tell me, no matter what you answer later. Then he shook the cane, and in an instant, a mysterious force appeared in the sky. In a burst of light, he saw the dragon in that scene. From this moment on, all memories were erased. As for the matter of erasing memories, only the higher UPS like them know about it, and the other dragons don't know that the Dao ancestor dragon has the power to erase memories. Otherwise I'm afraid it will attract the attention of the person who cast the spell. Even so, Long Xin also knew that he had something serious to say, and his expression suddenly became serious. Xiaolong looked at him solemnly and nodded, I understand this. After half a stick of incense. When Dragon Bone on the side saw this scene, he seemed to have guessed what he was going to say. He chuckled and folded his arms to watch. He should be a descendant of your Azure Dragon clan. I feel a very strong bloodline power in him. Haha, if that's the case, your Azure Dragon clan will be saved, and you don't have to complain here all day long. When Wusu, who was at the back, saw this, he patted his chest and took a breath. It was good that he was not called out, otherwise he would be embarrassed again. Long Xin and Long Gu took Long Ao to the altar on the giant hill. Hearing this, Wusu looked startled and covered his face helplessly. Even the top forces in the 10 domains are not clear. Seeing this situation, Long Ao stood up and replied respectfully. Why did I still find myself? A smile appeared on his face, and he took a deep look at Long Ao behind them. You are here. After all, there are hundreds of thousands of dragons in the entire dragon race land. Grandpa Zilong, Xiao Ao has a master, and this human race is my master's. But Grandpa Zilong, you can rest assured that my master has no ill intentions towards dragon race. He just wants him to come over and learn more about it. The old man in black robe stroked his hair and beard and showed a kind smile to the three of them. The old man in black robe nodded and glanced at Long Ao who was hiding behind him. As for Wusu, he just looked at it carefully and didn't say anything. Of course, you can rest assured that I won't do anything to you, just feel free to say it. Wusu sighed and walked out nervously, scratching his chin, feeling a little at a loss and not knowing what to say.